David Brinkley died on Wednesday at the age of 82. He was simply a great newsman, a great reporter, a great writer, and a great author. He redefined the nightly news. He redefined the Sunday television talk programs. He came to Washington at a young age, and because of television, became hugely famous. He was a fellow North Carolinian, and I admired him greatly. Here is one of the interviews I did with him, this one excerpted from a 1995 conversation. You characterize yourself as kind of a bookworm.
I am. I was.
Even then?
I always was. Partly because I wasn't happy at home. The Wilmington Public Library was only 3 blocks away. Yeah. And so 5 blocks. So when I had nothing else to do, which is quite often as a young boy, I walked down to the library, and the librarian, whose name was Miss Emma Woodward, took me over and tutored me for about 4 years. 3 or 4 hours every afternoon. She tutored me. That's where I was educated.
And that's where, and in a sense, found your curiosity. I mean, she stimulated your curiosity.
She did. And that's really where I got started.
And this love of writing, did she give you that?
I'm not sure that it's possible to give that to anyone, but it's possible to introduce them to it and make it a part of their lives, which is what she did for me.
Yeah. And you wanted to do what?
I wanted to be a newspaper man.
From the beginning?
From the beginning. That's all I've ever wanted to do.
Why?
I don't really know. I still want to be. I still want to do the same thing. I still want to do what I'm doing because I find it challenging, amusing, interesting, entertaining, profitable. Yeah. It has all the qualities I like.
Wrote for the Wilmington paper even when you were in high school?
I did, right. Yeah. I did.
And then went into the Army?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I went into the Army and I got a honorable medical discharge because the medical corps said I had some kidney problem, which I did not and do not and never have. But it was a mistaken diagnosis, and it saved my life. Because if I'd stayed in the company, the regiment I was in had 250 men in it, and in a bombing error by the U.S. Air Force, Army Air Force it was then, in a bombing error out of 245 were killed. So had I stayed in, I wouldn't be here now.
You
just
made,
luck.
Yeah, and what you just described that as what, just one of the things of life, dumb luck.
Dumb luck.
Yeah. You made your way to Washington.
I came here because I was told I had a job as a news writer at CBS.
Now, had you sent them stuff of yours, or how did they come to you?
I was working for the United Press and writing for the Radio Wire.
Yeah.
And they were reading it, and they liked what they read and offered me a job. But something happened between North Carolina and Washington, because when I got there,
no job.
There was no job. And the bureau manager sent the message out to me that he never heard of me, had no job, and so on. So I asked his receptionist to send him a message from me, and it was 3 words: go to hell.
All right. Do you remember his name?
I believe it was something white, but I'm not sure.
So you went over to NBC?
I went to NBC, which is 4 blocks away, and was hired in 5 minutes and stayed there 38 years.
Yeah.
So.
Writing for radio in the beginning.
Writing for announcers to read. That's how it was done.
Announcers wore tuxedos.
They did until after 6 p.m. NBC thought it proper that their people talking on the air looked the part, looked important, and took themselves seriously. So they made them wear tuxes.
Yeah. Did you want to be on the air? Did you want your voice to be heard?
No, not particularly. That didn't appeal to me much. It came along later, and it was kind of silly to resist it because that's where the future clearly was. Yeah. But I had a much better time writing and having other people do the reading.
You were 23 years old. Then.
Right. Yeah. And we grew up early in the South, you know that.
You went on to work, you thought Roosevelt was snobbish.
I didn't think it, I knew it. He made it clear when I and a dozen or 2 others gathered at the White House for his press conferences. Yeah. And he made it clear that he thought he used the term red brick college all the time. Yeah. And to him that meant some
state university somewhere.
At best. He was a product of Harvard and a C student. But he thought a C student at Harvard was superior to anyone else, anywhere, any college. Anyway, he was a snob. He thought we were not smart enough to represent him and his words to the American people. And that accounts for his beginning the so-called fireside chat. He wanted to go around us, the reporters, because he thought we weren't good enough, too dumb, red bread college. He went around us and talked to the American people by radio from a little tiny studio, which he called the fireside chat. There was no fireside, there was nothing, just a little desk. And that way he got away from us. He got around us, and he said whatever he wanted to say. And he was very good at that. He talked on the radio in the manner of a workman who had just come home and was sitting in the kitchen talking to his wife. Highly informal conversation. And it was very effective, and it got him elected 4 times.
And you haven't seen anyone in this country that good, maybe Ronald Reagan, in terms of the capacity to...
No. We've had our share of great orators, but not so much in politics. Reagan was very, very good as an orator. He wasn't terribly good in the kind of kitchen table style that Roosevelt used, but when he had a set piece, a written speech, I don't think we've ever had anyone who was more effective than he was. He was really very good. We've had a lot who weren't worth a damn.
You knew Truman?
Yes, I knew him very well. Liked him a lot.
Before I get to Truman and the stories of Truman and Churchill and the train and all of that, the introduction to television, when did it come for you?
Well, I can't give you a date, but it was approximately 1946, 7, somewhere along there. I don't know exactly. And when the first television camera arrived at the NBC studio where I was working, writing for radio, maybe by then I was on the air on radio, I don't know. And when the first one came, it was a big, ugly thing about the size of a stripped Volkswagen. Stripped meaning that there was nothing much to it, but one little turret with a camera on it and a lot of pipes and wires and wheels and so on. And they rolled it into the studio, and we almost laughed at it because it was so awkward looking. We wouldn't have known it was a television camera, but it had the NBC decal, NBC on the side. And we began to look at it and sort of kick the tires and wonder what to do with it, and it took us a long time to decide. I like to say, truthfully, that it arrived without an instruction book. We didn't know
You learned on the job.
We did. We learned by making mistakes and not repeating them.
At that time, did everybody know the potential of television? I mean, or was it a kind of...
It sort of grew on us, Charlie. It was not possible to see that television would become what it has become today, a truly massive force in this country and, in fact, around the world. Now, with satellites and all of that, and greater wonders, the mechanical, technical wonders yet to come, high definition and all of that. No, we didn't know what it was going to be. I remember across the street from NBC was a nightclub and a comic comedian. I can't think of his name at the moment, though you would remember him. I took him out one night for a drink to talk, and I said, you are now working in a cheap nightclub. You can soon be working on television because that, too, is very cheap. They don't pay anything. And at that time, they didn't.
Harry Truman. Did you like him?
I did. I liked him a lot.
Because?
Because he was very open, honest, decent, straight. And I'll give you a little example. When his daughter, Margaret, liked to sing. She wanted to be a singer. She appeared on some radio program, and the Washington Post music critic reviewed her singing and tore her limb from limb. He was really ugly and really rough on her. Truman was so furious. He wrote a letter to him threatening him with bodily harm. And as I say, I was doing radio at the time, and along with a lot of other smart alecks in Washington, and we all said, oh, this is terrible. The president should not behave that way. It's beneath him, beneath his dignity. He's the president. He shouldn't have done it. Fast forward. My son was then in school in Washington singing in the choir.
Yes.
Christmas Eve, his choir was invited to sing at the National Gallery of Art singing Christmas carols. The same music critic came to review this singing and was very ugly. And I said to my wife, if I can get my hands on this son of a bitch, I'll break his neck. She said, calm down, calm down. I mean, you know, it's when it's your dog being gored, you're not going to be very polite about it.
Yeah. And Truman when he left to play poker.
Yeah. when he went to Fulton, Missouri with Winston Churchill, who was ready to deliver his historic speech about the Iron Curtain, coining that phrase. On the way there, we traveled in a train, and they sat in the back car, the Ferdinand Magellan, which Truman had inherited from Franklin Roosevelt, and they began a poker game. Truman said to the other players, all of them from Missouri, friends of his, that they should, Churchill was going to be a wonderful player because he's so brilliant, but give him a good game and let him have some fun. Well, it turned out they found Churchill didn't know the game very well, yes. And he was losing. And he went out to change that zipper suit he used to wear called, what do you call them? Jumpsuit?
Yeah, jumpsuit.
Jumpsuit. Right. And while he was out, Truman said, look, he doesn't know the game. So when he comes, we don't want to take his money away from him. He's a great figure of history. And so we'll let him win. Play customer poker. And Churchill came back, and he began winning suddenly because they folded hands that should have won.
Found out he loved it. They folded all the way.
Right.
Now, is he the person in public life you most admire, Winston Churchill?
So. I think so.
Why?
Churchill, you say.
I'm sorry, Churchill, yeah.
Because he was, but for him, I believe the British would have been driven out of the war. He kept them in the war with his stirring, magnificent oratory. And he also kept us, the Americans, encouraged to continue fighting as we were. We would never have been driven out. But the British might, because this is about the third year of war for them. It's a small country. It's a wonderful country, but small. And they had lost a great number of their men, young men. The toll was very high. And Churchill kept them encouraged, kept them fighting, kept them in the game, until they won.
The indomitable will.
He did. He did.
Was that Jack Kennedy once said he mobilized the English language and saved the world?
He really did. He spoke in the most grand and glorious style. He spoke in the style of 1,000 years of English public school rhetoric. And his sentences sound like something out of the New Testament. They're perfectly beautiful. And I have tried to describe them in like an arch where if you take one stone out of the top, the whole arch collapses.
David Brinkley, dead at 82. Our sympathies to his family, especially his son, Alan Brinkley, who was a good friend of this show. He was one of a kind, and he will be missed by everyone. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.